the sprawling plain of the West Bank, home to Jericho, one of the world's oldest archaeological ruins. It provides proof, some say, that the God of the Old Testament is violent and even genocidal. Jericho was the first city to fall when the ancient Israelites invaded the land of Canaan 3,500 years ago. "Be strong and courageous," said the Lord. "Take the land." What happened here is disturbing, but was it genocide?
When you take this land, God warned the Israelites, don't for a moment think it's because you are a righteous people. No, it's because these Canaanite towns have become unspeakably evil. Israel, in other words, was to act as an instrument of divine justice.
We are talking serious evil, including child sacrifice.
It's strange that the account puts it like this, because in the ancient world, you didn't need a moral justification for going to war. If you were able to take your enemy's land, you were clear to do so. But the Bible repeatedly says this has nothing to do with a land grab or racial purification. It was divine judgment. Now that is still disturbing, but it mustn't be confused with genocide.
In terms of the conquest of Canaan, it is made very, very clear that this is not about the Israelites simply desiring somebody else's land and ethnically cleansing the people groups there. That in fact, this is about the justice of God coming on a corrupt culture, a culture that has been corrupt for a very long time, hundreds of years in fact. So from their point of view, this is about God's universal justice bringing. It's not about the gods supporting a particular king in wiping out another people group.
The point is driven home in the opening pages of the account.
It's very odd. The opening story of the Old Testament's main military record says that Joshua, Israel's general, has a vision of an angelic figure called the commander of the armies of the Lord. Joshua asks, naturally enough, "Are you for us or them?" The figure replies, "Neither."
We turn the page, and before we hear anything about military action, we're told about a Canaanite woman living by the city wall who already knows God. Rahab is a pagan prostitute, and she asks to be spared.
"We have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea for you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the 2 kings of the Amorites east of the Jordan. When we heard of this, our hearts melted in fear, and everyone's courage failed because of you. For the Lord, your God, is God in the heaven above and on the earth below. Now swear to me that because I have shown kindness to you, you will show kindness to my family. Give me a sign that you'll spare the lives of my father and my mother, my brothers and sisters."
She was given a sign, and she was spared.
The military violence of the rest of the book of Joshua is real and awful. I remember reading it to my son years ago and skipping over a few of the darker pages. But I know of no other military record from the ancient world that works so hard to tell readers that God has no favourites in this battle, and his first desire is to have mercy on enemies like Rahab.
No one denies there are difficult, confronting parts of the Old Testament, but understanding them is more complex than we often think. Charges of genocide and vindictiveness are simplistic, and one thing is clear above everything else. As the prostitute Rahab discovered, the door of divine mercy always remains open. It's hard to deny, history is littered with Christians proclaiming divine mercy and then taking up arms to enforce the faith. It's a hypocrisy we rightly hate today, but so did their founder. Perhaps no figure in history was more scathing of religious hypocrisy than Jesus of Nazareth. And central to his critique was religion's complicity in the violence that was everywhere in Roman times.
Galilee saw its fair share of religiously motivated violence, and some of it was staged from these caves behind me where rebels could hide from the authorities. Ever since the Romans began to occupy these traditional lands of Israel, some believed that armed resistance was the only practical way to replace a corrupt empire with the kingdom of God.
In 4 BC, the residents of Sepphoris, the capital of Galilee, raided the armory and claimed the town back from the Roman overlords. Rome crushed the rebellion with brutal efficiency. 10 years later, Judas the Galilean ran a guerrilla campaign to expel the pagan occupiers. He was killed, but his sons and grandsons kept the hope alive that one day a great military victory would establish heaven on earth, the so-called Kingdom of God.
Jesus taught about the kingdom of God, but he said if you want to belong to it, you have to shun violence. Love your enemies, he said. Do good to those who hate you. If someone slaps you on one cheek, turn the other cheek also. To some around here, these words must have sounded bizarre, or at least impractical.
When Jesus said, love your enemies, I think people paused. They may have said, wait a minute, can I hear that again? That sounds so odd. Because you see, people relied on each other in the ancient world. They relied on their neighbors, and there was limited resources. So you didn't just throw your extra around. You were very careful with who you helped, knowing that they would help you in return. That means for someone to say, love your enemies, that just sounded foolish.
Impractical or not, the first Christians, for the first few centuries, took their master seriously. Loving enemies and turning the other cheek were the true ways of God's kingdom, whatever the cost.